There is a
What are
lot
you
of hope,
seeing?
but people have to take a lot of action
Yes, I
and
agree. And use their voices.
use their voices, but also do more than protest.
Right.
Protesting really didn't even work in the 60s. It was
hmm
a tactic that was seen on television that helped. There was a lot of economic action being taken. There was actual boycotting. It's harder to do now. We have global.
hmm
One of the reasons I decided I didn't want to work for a government, didn't want to work
hmm
for multinationals, was because I saw our strategies weren't going to be able to work anymore. It's hard to
hmm
when so few have so much, it's hard for individuals to make a change. So here's what we have the opportunity to do. We're at the end of the Pluto and Capricorn era. We're getting a sneak peek of Pluto in Aquarius this year. It ends June 11th. So it's not really the Aquarian age, it's the Pluto and Aquarius era. But the Pluto in Aquarius era is all about social transformation, social
hmm
changing. So our social norms will end. Our
mm
our power structures are crumbling. Look how farcical it all is. It's like it's a cartoon,
It's
right?
bizarre world. I'm like,
It is.
what?
It
Every
and
time I tune in, I'm like,
it
upside
is
down world.
nuts. It is. It's upside
hmm
down. It's inside out. And because these structures have to show they're no longer serving, that can be a
hmm
very frightening thing. What do we do about a social safety net? What do we do? How do we take care of the least of us?
Hi, Lori. Welcome to the Awakened Heart podcast. I'm so excited to have you on. We're going to talk about the stars and astrology and
Right?
all the goings on around it. It's so
Absolutely.
important for us right now. And a lot of people
Yes.
really don't understand it
No.
or understand how important and how useful it is, right?
Right. Oh yeah. It's I think what most people see is pop astrology, whether you're reading
hmm
it on a blog or you're watching it on like TikTok or YouTube.
hmm
And a lot of it shuts people down and pigeonholes you instead of being the tool that it is to help you, what I like to say, surf the cosmic tide, where you can
hmm
play with the energy, even if it looks crunchy and bumpy.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, or in the back of the Cosmopolitan, was that the name of that magazine? Was
Oh,
it a
right. The
Cosmopolitan?
Cosmo. Yeah. Cosmopolitan. Right.
Cosmo magazine.
Cosmo horoscopes.
It's
Yeah.
always about
Mhm.
love and it's so loose and people didn't give it any merit. And then when somebody like a celebrity back in the day,
Mhm.
they talk about how they were into astrology and people thought they
Mhm.
were just crackerjack crazy, but
Right.
now it's becoming more accepted and much more mainstream,
Yeah.
and there's so many different aspects to astrology. It's
Yeah.
amazing how accurate it is when you really are able to really understand and interpret it, or have someone more likely like you that's
Right.
really understands it, because
Right.
there's so much to it than just, oh, what's your moon sign or what's your sun
Right.
sign.
What's your big three? Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
Well,
give my audience an idea of what your background is and what led you to diving in full time to being an astrologer.
it's a long story. I'm gonna shorten it down, but I want to thank
Okay,
you
we
for
can do in
giving me the
segments.
opportunity to say it. But so I started life. Believe it or not, I've always had well, I was born with a lot of clairs already active. And so as a little kid, I don't know if it was guidance or just perception, I found the transcendentalists and I was meditating as a kid. I didn't know it was metaphysical. My family wasn't. And so I turned that into an interest in humanity. So much more interested in people and how the world works, which led me to be a political analyst. I know it doesn't
Mhm.
sound like
Oh,
that would be a
interesting.
thing, but it is. And so I started life in the early 90s, 1990 to be exact, as a political analyst for
Mhm.
multinational corporations going into the developing world. Didn't like what I saw, left that, and then kind of meandered and tried to find my way, right? I was living in the Middle East because I was married to my college
Mm.
sweetheart and the father of my
Mhm.
children. And the internet came around, which I was fascinated by because I was shown it in 1988 by a professor. And I went to the internet cafe and I said, hey, I'll teach people how to use computers if you let me have some time here. And the guy said, yeah. And I started researching because life was getting crunchy. I had achieved all the things I was told you're supposed to do.
Mhm.
And I was very young in 1995. At that time, I hadn't turned 26 yet. Right. And I was like, this success thing is not meaningful. Why? Am I doing it wrong? Am I built wrong? Am I weird? Am I a freak? And like you do, you question yourself. And I
Mhm.
started going down these internet rabbit holes, which were great in the mid 90s. And I landed on Jonathan Kainer's Astro Chat. Now, Jonathan Kainer was a famous British astrologer. Famous.
Mhm.
He was on the morning TV shows. He's a quirky guy, very good astrologer. He wasn't just a sun sign astrologer. I asked him, am I a Cancer or a Leo? Some poor fool named William, who became my astrology teacher, took pity on me. There were no books available because it was illegal to study astrology in Bahrain. I broke through the
Mhm.
firewalls. It wasn't hard in
Mhm.
90. You didn't have to be a genius. Okay. Yeah. Had to ask the right question in the search bar. So I would get 20-page emails once a week, and I studied from there. And I had some really cool old astrologers. So that's what got me started.
Mhm.
In 98, I had to come back to the States with my kids. Not going into that. It was a thing. And my teacher said, you need to be reading professionally. I said, oh, I don't feel ready. I don't know. And he's like, just do it. And so I started. I had already read many hundreds of charts for practice. And I was good. I didn't think I was good enough because do we ever when we're young,
Mm-mm, mm-mm.
No, especially as women,
Yeah.
we hold ourselves to such high standards. And I kind of started and bumped along the way. But what they didn't teach me was the professional development side, how to start a session, how to end a session, how to manage clients, how to run a business. And I had kids to raise. So I became referral only because it was a little overwhelming to meet strangers that I didn't know. I'm pretty shy, believe it or not. You wouldn't know it if you follow me on TikTok. You'd think, wow, she's not shy. No, I am. I'm really shy. And so meeting strangers was just nerve wracking. And again, no client management skills. So between, I would say 2001 and 2014, you had to know the secret knock to get a reading from me.
Mhm.
And I had plenty. People liked what I did and but I didn't make it part of my business until 2014 when I led with being a business coach. And to my clients who were receptive, I added in the astrology, which is why they were successful in faster because we could immediately see which direction was going to work, what their timing was, when a launch would work. And that was really exciting because I'd spent a lot of time learning. So by 2018, I changed my life up and went on my own. The children were grown and decided to kind of really punt this.
You just changed it all up in like 2018. So you were
Yeah.
led, I mean, what a cool like background that you're a political analyst and then
Yeah.
you went into
Yeah.
astrology.
I was going to
Do
prove
you
it wrong.
now do you what was I going to say? So there's been so much going on in the last couple of years. And
Hmm.
since you're a political analyst and to tie that in with
Hmm.
astrology, and I know that you said you were working with a lot of the younger
Hmm.
generation during the COVID years, where a lot of them felt helpless.
Yeah.
You were saying, and helping them see that, hey, you know what? There's an opportunity here, and this is one of
Yes.
the greatest opportunities of places that we are right now. Because
Yes.
people look at it as the Great Awakening, and they're
Yes.
here for a reason during this
Hmm.
time. So
Yeah.
how do you what do you say to some of these younger generations or younger individuals during that time to help them, what were you seeing in them and what were you showing them to help them out of maybe that hopeless state?
Well, I was trying to show that our view of reality is perceptual
Mhm.
And that's neuroscience itself. It's been proven in the lab that we shape our reality based on our perceptions. It's not just metaphysical woo-woo talk anymore. We were right again. But they've proven it scientifically. So I would point that out. I would point out their social cultural programming, why they believed success was this and not that.
Mhm.
And then I encourage them to be active in their local communities, be active in their local politics. I would highlight their own values. So if I was on Reddit, which is where I started, I didn't get onto TikTok till October, and I didn't even
Mhm.
go on to message astrology. I went on to protest. I'm a little radical. Um, and I think I never grew up on the inside. I'll always be that radical young person wanting to make a difference. And so I was encouraging that in them, that they weren't to be defeated, that the dream job was sold to them. It may
Mhm.
not necessarily be their dream. It might be someone else's dream. And to understand, they have to sort and sift the difference. And so just kind of highlighting their strengths. If I saw it, I'm like, instead of having people say, because one of the things I did do is I got certified in coaching, which I think is a beautiful pairing. So you know how to draw things out of people. And
Mhm.
if somebody says, I'm stuck, I'm like, what is it like to feel free? I feel
Mhm.
lost. What is it like to
Mhm.
feel found? Because this is where it is in your
Mhm.
chart. How can you access
Mhm.
this? And
Mhm.
so, yeah, and it's been a wonderful journey.
And I like that because you're helping them find the answers within themselves. So
Yeah.
many people go to astrologers, "Oh, tell me where my
Mhm.
love of my life is." And you can
Mhm.
probably see that as well, but something as far as helping someone younger out of the journey out of themselves into finding hope and finding
Mhm.
value within themselves again, you're asking those questions so they can discover it within themselves, right?
Right. Right.
That's what it sounds
Including
like.
love.
Mhm.
I have a whole class I taught a couple years ago where I explained, if you don't work on your Venus and give it to you, you're going to
Mhm.
constantly attract your issues.
Mhm.
And it isn't a blame thing. It's just a frequency thing. And I think a lot of times it can be misinterpreted as blame. It's never blame. We never deserve bad treatment. But if
Mm-mm.
that's what you're used to, it's hard to accept the good stuff. So learning to give yourself the good stuff. Um, that's something I work with them on as well. And that, don't put your identity into another person.
Mhm.
Oof. You know,
100%. That
have
is
you
like
learned that
the
one? I learned that one.
Oh, I've learned that one. I've been on a solo journey for the last decade. I mean, I've always been on
Right.
a spiritual journey,
Right.
but literally a completely solo. It's like, "Huh,
Right.
okay." I think I've tried
Right.
every single thing in the book for love, so many
Right.
different things. Not trying,
Right.
trying energy. I'm done.
Yeah.
Like, it'll come when
Right.
it comes.
Right. And
Let me do
that's
what
when
I
it
need to
gets
do.
good. When you're
Yeah.
like, wow, I
Yeah.
get you. I'm in the same
Yeah.
position. It's like,
Yeah.
life
Yeah,
is
like a
really
decade, it's like,
good.
"What is a kiss?" Like, even, like, you're looking at kisses, like, the 5 best kisses, I'm like, "Oh, that doesn't look very good to me because 'cause it's been so
Right. That
someday
looks
some
messy.
yeah,
You
it
know?
looks messy, exactly, I think it was the Spider-Man kiss, I'm like, "Ugh, yucky."
Mhm. All right. And these kids
Yeah.
have been sold that their identity is through their appearance, they have to get the right answer because they've all been taught to get the right grades, get the right answer on a test. They weren't taught to journey. And so
Mhm,
giving them the opportunity to say, hey, your astrology chart isn't a cardboard cutout. It shows, energy is like, I mean, your consciousness is energy. And so it expresses in a spectrum. You have your instinctual consciousness, your fight and flight. You've got your transactional consciousness, which is your social cultural programming. And you've got your transcendent consciousness, which is an enlightenment, but it's where you learn to deconstruct and unpack your social cultural programming. You don't have to throw it all out. You just have to know which parts you want. And that's
mhm,
it's handing people their agency, and
mhm.
that's what I think is important. I think we miss that a lot of the times because we look outside, you know?
Mhm, mhm, and it said that we're all made up of the stars. I saw an amazing
Yeah.
Netflix documentary. I usually don't like watching these documentaries where there's animals involved 'cause I'm like, "Oh my god," because it's like, "Oh, look at the cute animal," and then
Right.
and I'm like, "Ah!" but it was called Our Universe, and it was
Mm,
tied to animals, but then how we're all tied to the stars,
yeah.
and just their natural rhythms, and just how it's like, there was the black hole, and then
Hmm.
just it's just a miracle that the stars were even created and were made up
Right.
of stars,
We're
and
all
it's
made of the
mhm,
same
yes.
particles. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
and when it exploded, I was like, "We're literally it's a miracle. It's a miracle we are here." And
Yeah.
animals are more tied to that natural, the turtles that go thousands of miles, but
Hmm.
they follow their way back through the electromagnetic field that is
Hmm.
underwater, and just the different instincts, and we've lost it because I've just learned a lot about earthing too, about connecting to
Hmm.
the earth, we're batteries and such. So
Hmm.
when you're
Hmm.
going to astrology, you're literally returning to something that's so natural because our ancients
Yeah.
have used it. I mean, the
Yeah.
pyramids were actually built not for the pharaohs, but they were. They're like, here we're pointing towards. Have you read Graham Hancock's Fingerprints of the Gods?
Mm-mm.
Literally, he's theorizing, and I've seen it before, where the pyramids were actually like space stations, because when society ends, a cataclysmic event, you're not going to remember a culture or
Right.
language or all that. What's constant? It's math. And
Right.
what does that point to? The stars.
The stars.
So it's like
Yeah.
we were
Hmm.
here in the time, like where it's facing, in the time of Leo. We were here in the time
Mm-hmm.
of Cancer.
Hmm.
So, and I know that, maybe you could give a little brief history on astrology, because I know that the geisha, a lot of geishas used it. They had an almanac, and people wouldn't do certain things when there's certain
Hmm.
things happening
It was
in the
probably
stars, and they
lunar.
look towards that.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not as familiar with
Mm-hmm.
Asian forms of astrology because
Mm-hmm.
they're very
Mm-hmm.
particular, but it is a more lunar calendar.
Mm-hmm.
A good friend of mine is a Batsi practitioner, and she does Chinese astrology, and it's its own system.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but all cultures, all have looked to the stars, and the first thing we looked at was the moon because it's and the sun. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The sun is a star. We know they're the luminaries. We refer to everything as a planet because it's shorthand, not because we don't understand astronomy. But we know that the sun and the moon are both causal to life on Earth. And those were the first rhythms we paid attention to, right? We
Mm-hmm.
know there's causality between the sun and the moon and Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Solar flares impact us. The moon
Mm-hmm.
impacts the tides, geoseismic activity. I've called a number of earthquakes looking at it. And it's not an easy thing to call, and it's very hard to pinpoint locations. And if geologists can't do it, I always say that's not my highest accuracy rating, but at least I can give a heads up, right? It's not my
Mm-hmm.
favorite thing to be right about. I don't like to be right about unfortunate activities.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but that's something that astrologers started with was looking at the natural world. What is the weather going to be
Mm-hmm.
like? When do we when are you going to be more fertile? Okay. They did a study, a scientific study in the late 70s, early 80s on lunar cycles and women's fertility. They found that
Mm.
70%, and I can't remember the name of the study, it is Googleable. Okay. Um, 70% of fertile women ovulated on new moons. That's
Mm.
a very
Woo!
large percentage of any
That is a
population. That
huge percentage.
hmm
I'm writing that one
and they
down.
studied
70%.
like 20,000 college kids. So it wasn't like 500 people were in the study. It was a big study. And so if you look at ancient cultures, a lot of them had things like moon time, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's when your period was happening.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And there were lots of cultural rules. Different cultures have different rules, but the thing is they paid attention because this was the production of the species, right?
Mm-hmm.
Get into Mercury. You could see Mercury, you could see Venus, you could see Mars. Okay. You could see Jupiter. In fact, Jupiter is pretty visible right now in the sky. You'll see it at night. Venus will be just above it in the evening
Mm-hmm.
sky. And then you could see Saturn. You couldn't see and still can't see any of the other celestial bodies without a telescope. So those
Mm-hmm.
original planets and luminaries were what we worked with. And then in the
Mm-hmm.
11th century, now this goes way back to Chaldea, I'm talking about Babylon and what have you. In the 11th century, there was a guy named Al-Biruni. You can tell I'm a geek, right? A guy named Al-Biruni took Ptolemaic math and work to improve upon it. Okay. So he came up with, and you can all hate him for this, he came up with spherical trigonometry using an eclipse. He plotted a route he could not see visually within 2 degrees of accuracy. And they still use
Wow.
that calculation style today for plotting distance. And so that led to the development of things like the Placidus house system that I use. I know it's not the most popular one today. In my experience, it's more accurate because it gives us a geolocational fixed point, and we
Mhm.
can check our daily rhythms with it to a little more accuracy. But yeah, it is the math. And
Mhm.
spirituality and math go hand in hand. We had
Mhm.
sacred geometry.
Mhm.
All cultures
Yes.
use it,
Yes, it's so
you
beautiful. Like you
know?
just put, sand or water onto something that's vibrating and
Hmm.
it turns into these beautiful patterns.
Yes.
We see it in snowflakes, like the
Yes.
beautiful geometry. There's so
Hmm.
many different geometric patterns.
Hmm.
It's in
And
water. It's pretty amazing. It's in
they
us.
replicate. Yeah, it's in
Mhm.
us. It's in our double helix. It's in our
Mhm.
skin if we look under the microscope. And we are all interconnected. So we have thousands of years of data around those 6 planets. Okay.
Mhm.
The outer planets didn't get found till we got telescopes. So Uranus wasn't discovered till 1787. Neptune wasn't discovered till 1848. Pluto wasn't discovered until 1930. And Chiron, everyone's favorite planet to blame for their wounds, is an asteroid who's escaped the Kuiper Belt and was discovered in 1977. Don't let anyone tell you it's the wound you cannot heal. That was an
Mhm.
assumption based off somebody naming it that. um, I don't think we can apply Greek myths to things the Greco-Romans didn't use. To
Mhm.
me, it's the healing light. Or the light on the healing journey of the wound only you can heal,
Mm.
you know?
Mhm.
Isn't that more powerful to know you
Yeah,
could
very
heal, you know?
very powerful that they're just not like helpless, like,
Yeah,
floating around the world.
right.
So I didn't know that about Chiron as
Yeah,
far as the
yeah,
as heals. Where are we with
yeah.
Chiron right now? What's
Chiron's
going
in
on?
Aries. Chiron's in
Oh,
Aries. It
Aries.
takes 5.5 years to transit a sign. Transits
Mhm.
are when the
Mhm.
planets are moving. Okay, so the
Mhm.
current transit for Chiron is it's in Aries. Yeah, he and I blew up my life because 2020 was coming and I knew I needed to be ready for it. We were looking at that back in the 90s and people thought we
Yeah,
were
people were
crazy.
saying no, not at all.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so, but you went to the kind of the hotbed. There was a lot of wonkiness that happened in Los Angeles, Portland, a lot of wonkiness. And that's where I had my wake up in Portland. Like, what the hell
uh,
is going on here?
right.
So I knew I didn't want to be there. But
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, and people are still like are coming out of at least we don't have that, left and right and center, like all these restrictions that are happening, but there's a lot happening in our world right now. There's a lot of
Yes,
agendas, there's a lot of stuff that's being pushed, and
yes.
a lot of people are waking up to it. I did
Yep.
during the period, and you rabbit hole and you come back out. What would you say to people that are, they're hearing all this stuff? Of course, turn off the freaking news. Don't,
Yeah,
only believe like pretty much zero of what comes out
yeah,
of mainstream news. But
right.
what would you say to somebody that, with the economy, they're starting to feel a little hopeless? I mean, you would read them, of course, but
Yes.
from your perspective, because you look at the stars and you can see in advance, like there's a lot of hope because you're seeing,
There is a
what are
lot
you
of hope,
seeing?
but people have to take a lot of action
Yes, I agree.
and
And use their voices.
use their voices, but also do more than protest.
Right.
Protesting really didn't even work in the 60s. It was
Hmm.
a tactic that was seen on television that helped. There was a lot of economic action being taken. There was actual boycotting. It's harder to do now. We have global.
Hmm.
One of the reasons I decided I didn't want to work for a government, didn't want to work
Hmm.
for multinationals, was because I saw our strategies weren't going to be able to work anymore. It's hard to
Hmm.
when so few have so much, it's hard for individuals to make a change.
Hmm.
Oh, the Malcolm. That's my dog.
Hmm.
So here's what we have the opportunity to do. We're at the end of the Pluto and Capricorn era. We're getting a sneak peek of Pluto in Aquarius this year. It ends June 11th. So it's not really the Aquarian age, it's the Pluto and Aquarius era. We don't really know when time began. So precession of the equinoxes
Mhm.
is debatable. I'm not going to say it doesn't exist. I line up with the people who think it started in the 19th century because
Mhm.
it's a 2,500-year period. It takes time to get started. But nobody knows for sure. We could argue all day long about that. But the Pluto in Aquarius era is all about social transformation, social
Mhm.
changing. So our social norms will end. Our
Mm.
our power structures are crumbling. Look how farcical it all is. Like
So much so.
it's like it's a cartoon,
At
right?
Bizarro World, I'm like,
It is.
"What?"
It
Every
and
time I tune in, I'm like, "What the
mhm.
world is going on?"
It
Upside
is
down world.
nuts. It is. It's upside
Mhm.
down. It's inside out. And because these structures have to show they're no longer serving, that can be a
Mhm.
very frightening thing. What do we do about a social safety net? What do we do? How do we take care of the least of us?
Mhm.
You know? And how do we maintain our own security? And it's as spiritual people, a lot of times, remember religion, whatever you believe. Now, there's a difference between belief and dogma.
Mhm.
That's all part of it too, because you got told, oh, don't worry, don't take care of yourself. You'll get it in the afterlife. Don't
Mhm.
think. If you think, well, that's dangerous.
Mhm.
Wow, if I wanted to control people, this is what the young
Oh,
people
yeah.
really dig. Now, if you believe differently than that, I mean no offense, right?
Mhm.
I'm just positing. So these structures are crumbling. We here now,
Mhm.
us, you, me, everyone listening is here to build the future forward, not wait for it to happen. We wait for it to happen. We get outcomes we do not want. One of the best ways is to take your own economic security in your own hands. Now, not
Mhm.
everybody's meant to be an entrepreneur. It's
Mhm.
hard. And there's going to be a lot of people selling that. My thought is worker cooperatives where people have employee owned businesses. If you've been part of a massive layoff and you guys are good coders or you guys are good at building and making things, build a cooperative.
Mhm.
Don't lean into the system that's going to lay you off again or cut you off before retirement.
Mhm. So you're saying when you're saying build a cooperative, so say you have
Hmm.
a bunch of coders, so they
Hmm.
all like work together and then
Hmm. You'd form
they
a
contract
business.
themselves out,
Well,
right?
you could make an agency, a cooperative
Mhm.
agency, but a co-op,
Mhm.
just like a farmer's co-op or a building supply co-op. These are employee and member owned businesses
Mhm.
where everybody has a say in how things are done. It doesn't get
Mhm.
run by a corporation. And
Got
there
it.
are,
Mhm.
I just reached out for my own podcast. I reached out to a place called LA Co-op Labs who work
Mhm.
with people all over the country to
Mhm.
form cooperative things. And you'd be like, Lori, what does that have to do with spirituality? Everything. Because
Mhm.
if you can't take care of you, you can't take care of your neighbor.
Mm-mm.
And we're all going to need a little more help. And how do you get sustainable practices in? Sustainability is important. It's not a scarcity mindset to want clean water.
Mm-mm.
You know, it's
Mm.
not a scarcity mindset. You can tell I grew up in Oregon. It's not a scarcity mindset to want clean air,
Mhm.
and good food. We do need to grow food. I've been warning about that for years. And climate change, people can argue about how it started. I don't care how it's like, I'm a cancer. So mom talk. I don't care how it started. We have to deal with it. We got a kitty. They always
Yeah.
come and say hi to me.
Yeah.
Um, I've got people growing food. I think
Mhm.
that's the thing I'm proudest of in the last 3
Yeah.
years of being very public as an astrologer because it wasn't safe to be public back in the day.
Right?
Um, they go, "Oh, you're cuckoo for coconuts."
Yeah. And even
Um,
deeper still, like you'd be burned,
mhm.
probably burned in the past.
Well, we often were the consultants of kings, queens, popes, emperors. It depended on what year and if we were in fashion. But Copernicus and Galileo both got in trouble because of being astrologers. It
Yeah.
wasn't because they were astronomers. They were astrologers
Mhm.
and happened to do astronomy. But anyway, the thing I'm proudest of most is there's over 1,000 families growing food
Mhm.
because I've been
That's
beating this
great.
people who had never gardened before. That's that lovely light you see here.
And
'Cause
especially in Los Angeles, like in the LA region, I
mhm,
mean, you can have a little plot of soil,
mhm,
even
mhm.
even if you got a small little house. It's so important because what they're doing to our foods is insanity, and they're
Well,
trying to
yeah,
wash people from doing it in their own homes. Like, oh, you can
right,
get a heart
yeah,
attack from doing like,
right.
and
I
then all the
have
small farmers are getting
Yeah,
crushed.
they are. And
Mhm,
so and we've had bad weather.
mhm,
California had massive flooding. It took out the almonds, it took out olives, it
mhm,
took out the fruit trees. And we could look at that with despair, or we can say, well, we've really needed to change monoculture. We've really needed to be more in practicing with the planet. And what can we do as individuals? That's a little hydroponic garden behind me, that little beautiful
mhm.
pink light. That's
Yeah.
a cucumber growing up
Oh
there,
my god, that's so cool. I
right?
never thought about it. Yeah,
Right, and it's
cucumbers.
a little it cost me less than $100. It was,
Mhm,
like, on sale for $50, and I decided, "Let's try it," because I love to garden, but I don't know how to garden in Southern California. I grew up in the
mhm,
Pacific Northwest where you
mhm.
throw something in the ground and it grows, right? And, but I have a tangerine tree on my porch, so it's pretty cool.
Ooh,
It's really
is
exciting for this
it's
Northwest girl.
tangerines? Do you oh my god, the blossoms. Do you have
Oh, they're
blossoms right now?
gorgeous. They're
Mm,
coming on because this was my first year growing one, and so winter didn't go so well, and I was a little
mhm,
worried about her.
mhm.
I named her Tammy.
Tammy,
I was a little
tangerine.
worried, right? Tammy the tangerine. But she's got her leaves coming back and
Oh,
she's
isn't that
got her
sweet?
buds coming. So blossoms will be soon. I'm excited.
Mm. Now, do you play any music or say, "I love you," so it grows, the
I talk to my
frequency? Yeah,
plants
I do
all the
too, and then you
time,
get a little bud,
all the
"Oh, I
time.
see you, little bud."
Mhm. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. All
Yeah.
the time. Yeah. Working with nature's intelligences is a
Mhm,
wonderful practice,
mhm.
um, because everything has an intelligence. Just
Yes.
because it isn't the same or expressed in the same way doesn't mean it's not there.
Mhm.
So,
And like we said
yeah.
at the beginning, we're all made of the same substance, like,
Yes.
yeah, we're all connected.
Yeah.
Y
We had a 1 in 400 trillion chance of being human,
yeah,
each one of us.
mhm. And there's so many I forgot which one I know from an ape, we're so like, one gene off or something, we're so close to
Mhm.
so many and then you see so many animals, like, I love watching the Instagram videos with animals, like, there's a bird and a pit bull, like, he barks, like,
Mhm.
they grew up together, it's
Right.
called Peggy and Molly, it's a great account, and you see
Oh.
it's, one of those mockingbirds or whatever that can bark, it'll
Oh, I've
bark in a
seen
place
that.
yeah, I
Mhm.
love them. And
So
then you see
cute.
ducks with kitty cats, or you'll see like a
Mhm.
goat that's, following a horse or whatever, and they can
Mhm.
just all get along together. And that's what we got to learn to do. We got to look to nature and the animals and the stars and align
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
what you were
And
saying.
chill out a little bit, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah, chill out
Absolutely.
and learn to did you ever see the I can't remember which movie this was. It was a cartoon back in like the mid 2000s with penguins and there was this surfer dude penguin
Yes.
teaching the little ones work with the grain. That's what we kind of have to do. We have to surf with the cosmic tide, not against
Mhm,
it, not clutching our pearls and saying, "Oh
mhm,
no, yes, tragedies happen." And
mhm,
sometimes that's what it takes for humanity to evolve,
mhm,
and we've seen it time and time again. Um, and so learning how to operate your own agency and your own free will, and none of us were taught how. So it's a learning curve. That's part of the journey is learning
mhm,
that you do have it. It's not always easy and it's sometimes scary,
mhm.
but I have a really good friend who was walking me through a big life change and I had to make a phone call I didn't want to make. And she said, the
My
fire's
cat
not
is never
real.
up here, by the way.
Oh,
She's never,
they
they
love
like
me.
you.
Yeah, the animals will always come up. The babies too. The
Yeah.
babies. I've got a couple babies in my Patreon group. They
Mhm.
they they come for the coffee
Yeah,
with Laurie sessions.
as soon as you're up.
Hmm. Yeah, the minute they
Sorry,
hear
but
my
go ahead.
voice, it's okay.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, she said the fire isn't real. You see that, the fire you feel that's in front of you. It's not real. It's an illusion. Walk through it. And 90%
Mhm,
of our fear is truly an illusion once we deal with something, once we get into action. Not all of it. If a bear is chasing you, it's chasing you.
mhm,
That's
yeah,
hello. But
yeah,
that fear of being seen, that fear of being inauthentic, that fear of What if they think I'm egotistical? What if they call me egotistical? I get called egotistical all the time. I'm like, okay, I'm a middle-aged woman who has a lot of experience and knows she's good at a few things. I'm not good at everything. Don't ask
Mm.
me to do the accounting. It's not going to work. Don't ask me to do the
See?
housework.
And that's the difference with you and all
Mhm,
the work that you've done with yourself is
mhm,
like somebody could say something bad about you and you're,
mhm,
no, I know who I am. Okay. That's
mhm.
not accurate, but okay.
Yeah.
And other people would just be floored and they're so afraid to
Mhm.
speak or live in their truth because of what someone else might think of
Might
them.
think, yeah.
And
And
that's
that's
how
when you're
we're
giving,
programmed
yeah, because
your
we've been
power
programmed
away.
to give our power away. And I'm not going to lie, years ago, when I was learning these skills, it bothered me as much as it bothered
Of
everybody
course.
else.
Mhm.
I had a blog. It was a totally unrelated industry. I got so much hate mail. And all I was writing was
You're just
people had value.
mean.
And it was crochet. Okay. It was about
Oh
crochet.
my God.
Right? And
The
people
keyboard
got so
warriors.
mean.
Woo.
Oh, yeah. I got death threats. I got because I
Oh
was
my
telling
gosh.
people if your mother-in-law doesn't like the Afghan you crochet, don't crochet for them anymore. Just get them a gift card. That was
Mhm.
it. That was the advice. And I would get literally, you're a militant feminist. And I was like, really? I haven't even said my real opinion. What the heck? And so I learned over time, and I would be crushed when I got some of those, I would be
Mhm.
so startled and hurt that someone like it got to be where if it was a 5-paragraph thing, I would look at the first paragraph, scan it, and I would be like, okay, I'm not reading that. I'm
Right.
not going to deal with it. Um, and so then you learn how to use their energy to build you. I had
Mhm.
somebody not like something I said on TikTok the other day, and they wrote with a really bad texting grammar, like for
Mhm.
was FIR, like the fir tree.
Uh-huh. That's
So
a
I
little creepy.
responded in a pirate voice because it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I couldn't have done that young. I couldn't have
Mhm.
done that in my 30s. In fact, I didn't. I was mortified. I'd cry. I'd be like, I'm never blogging again. I'd want to give up.
And it's a blog for Christ's
Yeah,
sake. It's a
that's all it
blog.
was. It was a crochet blog. Yeah.
And it's just
Mhm.
on them, whatever
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
they wouldn't say that necessarily to your face. People
Mhm.
have just gotten so wicked and so
Mhm.
mean. And a lot of people are stopped from voicing
Yeah.
their truth or standing up. Like you said, there's so many things that are coming to the surface to be resolved. Like all
Yes.
this yuckiness that's buried beneath the surface that a lot of people before the slowdown with the, COVID pandemic,
Mhm.
whatever people's views are on that, but things have come to the surface. And like you said,
Yes.
upside down world. And it
Mhm.
has to, but
Yeah.
people need to be, first of all, we need to work together and unify and raise our
Yeah.
voices against what
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
have
And
planned,
if you don't speak your truth, if you don't
Mhm.
share your gifts, then the world is robbed.
Mhm.
Don't let people take that gift from us. We need that, and
Mhm.
because then you just give the jerks power and find
Mhm.
people to support you. Sisterhoods are
Mhm.
brilliant. Brotherhoods are great. Themhoods, fantastic. Whatever
Mhm.
you want to call
Mhm.
it. Um,
Exactly.
find community, build it. That's how
Yeah.
we get through the next 20 some
Yeah.
years.
And it's important to feel that
Hmm.
strength. We are moving towards community in different
Hmm.
ways, sustainable living and different
Hmm.
ways of living outside of this system that needs to collapse in order for something to be rebuilt from the
Yes.
ashes.
Hmm.
So, and like I said, so many people, don't speak up because they don't want, I don't want to lose followers. I don't want to be canceled. I'm like, I'm going to put that up. Cancel me. I don't freaking care because it needs to be said. And it needs to be out there. I mean, I know so many people that are like have larger platforms and they're just
Hmm.
like going like, this is not, good,
Right.
what they're doing to women, all this bless. And I'm
Hmm.
like, God bless your heart. Thank you very
Yes.
much.
Well,
Because she's going to have
especially
influence.
younger people, especially, and I will say younger, meaning younger than me, um, but especially, let's say millennials through Gen
Mm-hmm.
Z,
Mm-hmm.
authenticity matters greatly to them. And if you don't stand for nothing, if you don't stand for something, you stand for nothing. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's important to have, I get hit sometimes because I let my political views be known. And
Mm-hmm.
now when I make an astrological analysis, I can step back
Mm-hmm.
and I do. But if something unfortunate it's happening to someone I don't particularly care for, I do get some schadenfreude out of it. And I'm not afraid to say it.
Mhm,
There's a
mhm,
difference. And astrologers don't
mhm,
have to remain unbiased except when
mhm,
we're looking at outcomes, right? But we can
mhm,
deliver the information any way we want. Um, and that has got the right people over. If you don't share your opinion, you don't get the right people. If you can't make everybody happy. There's 8
mm-mm,
billion people on this planet. You think you're gonna
mhm.
make them all happy and like you? Good luck with that. There's gonna be people who don't like you just looking at you. They're gonna be like, oh well, I don't like this person, you know.
Exactly.
So
And it'll stop. And when, like you were saying, myself included, when we're younger, it would stop us in our tracks.
yeah.
I want everyone to like me. What are
Mm-hmm.
they thinking about me? And then you get to a
Mm-hmm.
certain experience or a certain age, but even younger people are, they have, you come in with a solid sense of self, or
Yeah,
they've had to go through something in their own life where they're like, you know what?
absolutely.
I am me, and standing
Mm-hmm.
in my beautiful truth. And when
Mm-hmm.
you stand in your own truth, you inspire others to do the same and have the
Oh,
courage to do the same.
absolutely.
That's what is
Yeah.
needed in this next
Yeah.
transition. And I know
Yeah.
that you work with people. You said that you do
I
one-on-one
do
coaching. Is this kind
I
of some of the
do
stuff that
coaching
you're
and consulting with
Mhm.
astrology. Yeah. So
Okay.
I have straight up astrology readings that are like a
Mhm.
natal chart. And I actually have mentored and actually true apprenticeship, like a medieval apprenticeship. These guys,
Mm.
we should practically live together at this point. That's how much we talk every day. They do the natal readings. I do all of the consultations and coaching readings, where I help people kind of learn to navigate their timing,
Mhm.
and I teach as well. So
Mhm.
but navigate their timing, I call it a career life path. It kind of covers anything because you have to call it something for people to recognize. And people have been so trained to believe career. Most people don't have careers. Most people have day
Mhm.
jobs they can kind of sort of tolerate and stick out for a while.
Mm. Mhm.
What the ancients meant by that, most people will have enough familiarity with astrology anymore. That 10th house is where people look for career. It's really your avocation, it's your calling, it's your
Mhm.
reputation in the world. That's why we see promotions, or if somebody's being laid off, positive, negative, we'll see it in that house. It's your reputation. It is what other people see. And then the 6th house is our workaday life, and how we make our money, how we make our daily bread, how we are in service, and who we employ is in that 6th house.
Mhm.
And so that's usually what people come to me for, but there's usually an aching and a longing. They're feeling their soul's calling, and they may not be able to shape it in words. They
Mhm.
may have gone through a lot. Most people come to us, for a reason. Nobody comes to you just to out of curiosity's sake. It's usually they're at a crossroads trying to figure life out. Maybe the career they've had for some time isn't working, or they realize they're unsatisfied. The lockdowns did that for a lot of, it was a gift
Mhm.
for a lot of people
Mhm.
because they finally got to
Mhm.
be quiet. They weren't living by rote and robotically get up, go get coffee, get in the car, drive.
Mhm.
They got this chance to self-examine. And so, but then what? Because you weren't taught to want what you want. You were taught to want what other people wanted. And you might think what you want is really weird, right?
Mhm.
Oh, when I grow up, I want to be an astrologer. you know, I
Mhm.
really did want to be a metaphysical person when I was a
Mhm.
kid. I was like,
Mm.
oh, that would be so cool. But then what do you learn? Well, that's not a real job. Yeah.
Mhm. You're a
But yeah,
doctor, lawyer, teacher.
right. Yeah,
Well, you are a teacher.
exactly. Yes. And always
Yeah.
teaching. And it's in my
Mhm.
chart. I've always wanted to teach and I always have taught. I just didn't become
Mhm.
a school teacher. So helping people navigate that and then referring them out to resources that can really help, whether it's another professional. And it's not like a affiliate thing at all. It's just if I know a really good therapist that somebody could work with, or if I know a program, um, some kind of agency, if I've read about a grant, it's
Mhm.
whatever I've got on top of my head and be like, oh, wow, I read about this. Sometimes that's where the intuition and the woo woo bit comes in. It'll be like, I
Mhm.
was just reading on this subject and here you are. Here's a link to the article.
Yeah.
So, just being able to gift people with tools. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, I do with the 101s. I teach classes. We've got the natal
Mhm.
foundations coming up. Then I have a Patreon, which
Yeah.
is
That's subscriptions, right?
yeah, I do it as just a
Mhm.
patronage. It's like
Okay.
pledging for NPR.
Oh, okay.
So, and that
Oh, great.
sponsors the podcast.
Mhm.
And then I have like Planet of the Month Club, which is more like an astrology salon. We take a planet a
Mhm.
month and dive and
Deep dive.
deconstruct, and
Oh, that's
so
so cool.
fun. Yeah. Yeah.
And the name of your podcast, the Awake Space Astrology
Mm-hmm.
Podcast. People are gonna have to
Mm-hmm.
go check that out
Right.
too. And where can people find you to work with you? Where's the best place for them to go when we want to, learn a little bit more about this, or maybe work with you one on one, or
One
to
on
have a
one.
reading? Yeah.
The easiest place to find everything is my
Mhm.
snip feed link, because that's my
Mhm.
link page. And that's snipfeed.co/. Astro Laurie underscore, or sorry, Astro underscore Laurie, or you go to wokeastrology.com
Mhm.
and you can click on readings, and you'll see under
Mhm.
natal readings, it's my astrologers that are still mentored by me, but they are remarkable astrologers. They have put in hundreds of hours of training with me.
Mhm.
Um, hundreds, they were selected out of a large, I probably top 400 people that year, and kind of asked these ones to study with me. Mostly they had the time, they had the dedication, they had the enthusiasm. Time was the most important factor
Mhm.
beyond we got along. Because if you want to, it's like being dunked in. I dunked them in at the deep end, let's put it that way, and gave them what I didn't get. That's kind of the privilege of being at our age, being able
Mhm.
to give young people what we didn't get. So
Mhm.
how to start and end a session, how to do client management, how to
Mhm.
run that side of it, and then supporting their process. So
Mhm.
they're great. Um, going to be teaching them the coaching side of it soon so they can grow
Mhm.
into that as well. I like helping people grow, you know.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, that's where you can find me. The Wake Space
Okay,
Astrology
great.
podcast is everywhere, and find me on TikTok. I don't think it's going to get banned, to be honest. I actually found its
Uh-huh.
chart. So, well, we
You found
constructed
what?
its chart. I have TikTok's astrology chart.
Oh
My
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 god,
my
that's
astro
so cool.
my astrologers and I spent an entire evening. I was giving them,
Mhm.
like all the instructions of like, okay, go find when this happened. Go find when this
Mhm.
happened. Okay, we've got a
Mhm.
time. All right. And so I don't see that they'll be banned entirely. The Restrict
Mhm.
Act is something I'm concerned about. And
Mhm.
if you're a spiritual person, again, being awake means our spiritual and physical lives are intertwined. We're walking stardust, but we're
Mhm.
here.
Miracles. Yeah.
We are.
Yeah.
Gosh, I'm so glad I got to be here with you today. Thank you so
I am
much for
so
having
glad to.
me.
You're welcome so much. I have one more question before we
Hmm.
end. Well, first of all, one more question before the last question that I always ask. So I
Hmm.
just want to, go backwards again to the natal chart, because
Hmm.
some people don't understand what a natal chart. I mean, there's so many components to it, but in a
Yes.
nutshell, like the natal chart is
Hmm.
like where you were born and the city and the year,
Hmm.
because the
And the
time we're
time.
born really imprints on us certain personality and traits or aspects, or how would
Well, the
you
whole chart, the whole chart is your personality. So the
Yep.
chart is the
Okay.
map of the sky of the
Mm-hmm.
time, the place the time, the day at the place you were born. The time sets the ascendant, which is your physicality.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, normally in a reading, I teach it this way. To the left of the chart, if you're looking at your natal chart, that's east. That's where the
Mm-hmm.
sun rises, right? All the signs rise on the east. On the opposite side, to the right, is west. That's where everything goes to bed. That's why you have an ascendant and a descendant. The ascendant is rising above the horizon, the descendant is setting below the horizon. That line in the middle, that thick line, goes all the way through. That's the ecliptic or the horizon. Everything above that line you can see with the naked eye or
Mm-hmm.
telescope. Everything below that would be beneath your feet. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Or they'd see it in the opposite hemisphere. So it's a map. The top of the chart is south. The bottom of the chart is north. It is a map. It is a map of you. It is the ultimate blueprint. It is a slice of time and space crystallized into physical form.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's you.
So
You are
cool.
not separate from your astrology chart.
Mm-hmm.
It does not doom you to any particular fate. Each one of those symbols represents hundreds of thousands of potentials and possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. 90% of what you see in the popular sphere is very boiled down,
Mm-hmm.
oversimplified interpretations. And the reason for that is astrology is hard to write about because you
There's so
synthesize
many
the whole
aspects.
thing. Yeah, you see the 12, everybody's got all 12 signs,
Mm-hmm.
everybody's got all 12 planets. I have a little walkthrough video on the natal chart on my YouTube. I did it
Uh,
like a 7-minute
mm-hmm.
visual walkthrough to
Mm-hmm.
explain the parts of the chart.
Okay,
It's
we're gonna have
free.
to put
Just
that link there
yeah.
for them
I
to
just
find
I just
that.
remembered it and I go through the whole
Okay,
thing.
great.
It's got little moving arrows and I love what we can do with video now. We can just go onto
Yeah.
Canva and
Oh, yes, yes.
life is
Yeah,
good.
Canva's great. Yes, life is good. Life is good. Okay, so that's it in a
Mhm.
nutshell. And there's so many
Mhm.
different aspects. I know I've gotten mine done. I look at the chart. I'm like, I
Right. Well, and that's the thing. It's really easy to get a chart cast for free today because we
don't.
have software.
Yeah,
Back in the
but you need someone to
day,
interpret it.
right, back in the
Hmm.
day, that was what we were paid for as astrologers was the math, right? Now you want to flip it. Math's the easy part
Hmm.
now. Now we want to you want a good interpretation. And that's why I'm doing
Hmm.
a lot of teaching because
Hmm.
I'm teaching a
Hmm.
progressive lens. N- And when I say progressive, it's a wider lens, moving out of duality, moving out of binary thinking, because we're more than either or, good or bad. Okay.
Hmm.
And a lot of the definitions were made through a patriarchal lens. So
Hmm.
good girls do, bad girls, or good girls
Hmm.
don't, bad girls do. This is the ideal feminine. Remember, the feminine was always described through a masculine lens,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So that's something we have to understand. And so it's just opening it up and understanding it's energy
Hmm.
and
Everything's energy.
everything's energy. And so you're not doomed, you're not fated. If you take your agency, you can be if you want. You can use it as an excuse. You'd be like, well, that's it. My life's going to suck. And you will be right, or you can
Yeah.
go, I've had challenges, but those gave me some skill building and I can
Hmm.
use it this way. And so, and that's what I
Empowered.
did to help heal myself. It's like
Hmm.
I could have
And
stayed
it's so
stuck.
empowering.
Mhm.
Absolutely. We can all be
Yeah.
victim and staying stuck, but how do we, or not relying on someone else? You have to do the own work yourself and use that
Right.
knowledge and come out shining, shining like a light. Well, I love
Exactly.
that. I love that. I would love to, I'm going to have to pull up my chart again and try to understand things. We're in
Mhm.
retrograde right now, you said, right?
Yeah.
How
Mercury
many,
is retrograde. And today is, let's see, we're in April and it'll be
mhm.
retrograde through mid May. So, and it's retrograde
Good
in
God.
Taurus.
Okay. At least
So
it's
it's
almost
only
coming up because
retro.
I know we went,
Right.
okay,
Yeah,
mid
it's only
May.
retrograde for 3 weeks and then it moves in through the shadow. There's no such thing as a pre-shadow. It doesn't exist. So there's a pre-retrograde. So that's
So
internet
maybe I'll look
astrology.
to sign a new
Mhm.
lease or a contract at the
Mm.
end of May, early June.
You could, but you know what? I signed the lease for where I live during
Mhm,
Mercury retrograde because it
mhm,
resolved a problem. I bought a new
mhm,
car during a Mercury retrograde. It was fine.
mhm.
It resolved a problem.
Right. No,
I- if
completely agree.
yeah, so if you're wanting somewhere and it resolves something for you,
Mhm,
you're completing an existing issue.
mhm. Yeah.
Right. So if you just woke up one day and went, I want a new house, well, that might not be the best time to do it. Right. That
Yeah.
it's, you don't want to follow the new impulse, but yeah.
No, no, something that's there
Yeah. You could
and
look
that
for
resonates.
stuff.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I'm definitely
Hmm.
looking. I was just
Hmm.
thinking about the communication with my sister.
Oh,
Big blow up yesterday, but it's all right. Been gone for
oh,
25 years, now I'm back. But anyway, we'll get
right.
through it.
Oh, yeah, I get it.
But one more question before you go. I love to ask, I'll make you ask this question. What does it mean for you to live with an awakened heart?
Mm, that's a beautiful question. I think when you live with an awakened heart, you learn to see yourself through the eyes of source. You learn to
Mm,
see yourself through the eyes of the universe. And when you can experience that connection as much as possible, it's really hard to see anyone else any other way as well, even if maybe you don't prefer their behavior or you don't prefer what they're doing. But in a wider lens, we can see people as part of that reflection of the cosmos, just like we are. And so
Mm-hmm.
you got to give it here first, though. I think we
Mm-hmm.
wired it backwards,
Mm-hmm. Because
So
we're all just looking out there.
yeah, yeah. But the more it wakes up, the more you realize
Mm-hmm.
how worthy you are, how valuable you are, how lovable and loving you are, and the need to treasure yourself and honor yourself. And that's not a
Mm-hmm.
selfish thing because it allows you to give
Mm-hmm.
overflowing
Mm-hmm.
to
Give from
others.
the overflow, I always say.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Laurie. This has
Thank
been a wonderful
you.
conversation. Everyone
So for
needs to
real. Yeah.
seek you out and find out so you can learn how to empower yourself with, the wisdom from the stars and like the knowledge within yourself that she can help you discover. Well, you can do a reading with her and she will help show you, but then you can dive deeper into some of her
Mhm.
classes and learn how to interpret yourself.
Absolutely.
So, and yeah, and because the next era isn't working for the man and doing something
No.
you hate for the next 30 years, but it's about creating something that's the whispering for your souls, because that is what you're here
Yes.
to do on this earth, and
Mm.
to share your gifts with the world. And then you're inspiring others to do the same. And, our earth, our heaven is right here on earth that we can
Yes.
create right now. Yeah.
100. Wow.
Yeah.
Chills. Thank you so much. Thank
You're
you.
welcome. Thank you. Well, you have a wonderful rest of your day.
You too. Take
Okay.
care.
Okay.
Deep
Thanks.
breaths. It gets better.
All right. Bye
Okay.
bye.
Bye bye.